Now we have a recording. So great stuff. All right. A few in the group. We were quite limited today, but that doesn't matter. We're going to get started anyway. And so we're at Unit 2 already of M1. And what we said yesterday was you just got to keep going and keep swimming. And so hopefully by the end of tomorrow afternoon, everything will fall into place and you'll understand how this works. Okay, so we've got a robot. We all built a robot, just a basic robot, just a basic chassis. There's a Riley rover. We've got a Riley. Okay, so Tumelo sitting behind me has got the basic Riley rover with the brain and the wheels and the motors. And then we've got the wires which connect the hub to the motor. All right. This is what's called the brain, and the brain is going to either with a USB cable or with Bluetooth thing going to connect to your computer, and then the computer programs you write on your laptop or your computer, you're going to download onto your brain, and then the robot is going to move. And we're going to demonstrate that now. Sorry. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you just a kind of basic overview of programming. And then what we'll do is I'm going to hand over to Tumelo, and he's going to take you step by step and show you how to program a robot to go forward and to come back. Well, we first go forward and then we stop and then we go forward and come back. All right. So just let me by way of introduction, introduce programming. I'm not sure how many of you have already got some programming background. What we're moving towards is the Scratch programming, and the Scratch programming is what's included in the school curriculum. And so what I find is that when learners have been exposed to Scratch in their classrooms, in their computer classes, and they come and do workshops with us, then it's like, oh, this is easy. I know how to do this. And so that just breaks down any barriers which learners experience. Okay, so let me share my screen, and I'm going to ask Tumelo and Elmarie again to be in the lobby. And I'm sharing my screen, and then we can go from the beginning. Cool. All right, so welcome to Unit 2. And here we go. So there's different programming languages, and maybe I should just go back a bit like that. So one of the things that I find when I'm teaching programming first and second years, it's text-based. So it's a syntax programming, and it's Python, and initially it was Delphi, and then it was very important that you put the syntax correct. So that was always a stumbling block. Programming in and of itself is abstract, and so to make it abstract with a funny syntax is just making it even more abstract, I think. But there's a continuum of programming, and what we are going to do is start right at the beginning, and we do icon-based programming. Now, the EV3 lab version of programming is really icon-based programming. The we do for the grades 1, 2, and 3 is icon-based programming. Okay, so the next step up from that is then Scratch programming, which is color-coded, and instead of going the code you write left to right in icon-based programming, with Scratch we write it from top down, and you'll see that's the different orientation of the coding. All right, so this used to be for the EV3, it's called EV3 Lab, and we wrote it from left to right, and obviously the longer the code goes, the more complex it becomes, but that was kind of what it looked like. Okay, we're moving away from this only just to streamline everything into Scratch. Okay, so this is what your Scratch program is going to look like, and Tumelo will show you what the environment looks like. So if you're going to do if you've got an EV3 robot, you download EV3 Classroom as your programming language. If you have a Spike Prime robotics kit, then it looks exactly the same. It's also Scratch, but it's on the programming app. If you have the little hub, like the Spike Essential, then that's also going to look like Scratch. So all one and the same thing, actually. And so once you get in your mind, what does pink mean? What does yellow mean? What is blue? What is purple? And so then it becomes that much easier. It's color-coded. Right? Okay. So we're going to launch, hopefully, the MOOC 1 portal. We are trying to work very hard on Friday. If not, we'll at least give you a tour of what it looks like currently. And in that document, there are 4 folders, and each folder has a unit content. All right. And so this is the Unit 2 content. It's a short document, and it gives you some lead ideas of how do you introduce the concept of programming. So what are the problems the robot doesn't function properly? Could it be? What could be the issues? Name the directions in which the wheeled robot can move. The wheel can only move this way or that way. So if it moves this way, it goes forward, and it moves the other way, well, it goes backwards. All right. And so then it's explain how a wheeled robot moves forward and backwards. And then how does a wheeled robot to turn left or right? Well, if you've got two wheels and you switch off the right-hand wheel and you make the left wheel turn, you're going to turn towards your right. If you have a robot, if you would pretend you're driving the robot and you put off your left wheel and your right wheel keeps turning, well, then you're going to turn to the left. That's what it is. All right. And yeah, and there's just always things of moving forward, moving backwards, and the momentum. So you need to put a weight in your coding. This is all part of the problem solving, which we're going to get to just now. Okay, so there's some objectives in your Unit 2 learning folder, and this is what your program is going to look like. Okay, so if you read it, so when the program starts, you set the motors C and D, those are the ones that are connected, the motors connected to the brain, and move for 3 rotations at 50%, 50%. So left is 50% and right is 50%, and then you stop moving. Okay, there are various ways of doing it. You could have broken up this one here into 2 different steps and said C is 50% and D is 50%. It's not wrong. It's fine. And in the old way, how we used to do it, we used to reset the motors, and then we used to move forward for 50% power for 3 rotations. So it's all different ways of doing it. Okay. However, I want to just stop here and say you have to start and end well. You have to tell your robot, if you look back here, you're not telling your robot anything. You see the little puzzle piece, it's kind of waiting, waiting for the next piece, and it's not happening. All right. So here, you've got to put a stop and exit program at the bottom. And so Sylvia has termed the phrase hamburger. So you've got a roll at the top, and you've got your bread roll at the bottom, and everything in between is your hamburger. All right. You have to make sure that your robot knows this is the end. Okay. So start well and end well, and then your robot will not get confused. Previous slide. Can I go? Okay. I've got this voice behind me. I'm hearing voices. It's so cool. Okay. So what Tumelo is going to show you just now is that this is your canvas for your Scratch programming, and everything is drag and drop. So if you click on movement, this will become visible. If you click on sound, then or display, then these icons, and you drag and drop them. He's going to show you now. This green means it's connected, so you are Bluetoothing straight to your robot. This means there's a touch sensor in port number 3, and this means there's a wheel in port number A and the wheel in port number D. Everything is there. All right, so just as a convention, if you were to drive your wheel, and this is just when you have larger classes of, say, 30 learners, and you want to quickly debug something, you need to be able to see it. And so B is on your left, and C is on your right, and so it's just a convention. It makes for teaching easy. If you have your own convention, great, but B and C are the wheels for traction. Traction's in the front. So remember, when you put your robot down, you must always put the traction wheels in the front, because they've got a grip onto the table to kind of move forward. Otherwise, they're going to slip. I just want you to notice as well, some of the robots have got little caster wheels at the back. That really acts like a pick and pay trolley as well, where sometimes it doesn't behave. I'm just saying, or maybe it's the old trolleys. Okay, so what you want to do with your learners now is we're going to introduce good programming habits. All right, like you reset your motors. Why do you reset your motors? Because they're geared inside, and so just reset them to say ready, steady, go. Okay. The other one is when you change direction, put a pause in, even if it's just for half a second. Okay. When you drive a car, you don't go forward, backwards. You go forward, you stop, change gears, and then you go backwards. All right. So it's actually the same, and that's because of momentum. Okay. So some more good programming habits. Oh my goodness, save your programs as often as you can. And it's a good habit that your teams take responsibility for that. Test your code regularly, especially little pieces that can be reused. And I would definitely say put backup in place. So, you know, every day you give it a name, and your name file. So I always used to name them according to the day. So today is the 5th 5th of February, so it's 2025-0205, and then main program or whatever. And then to add comments to your code, and Tumelo will show you how to do that. All right. Of course, there are always gazillions of resources. So there's EV3 lessons for those who've got EV3s. There's Prime lessons. There's Build-A-Dude. We're going to try in the course of the next month to kind of link up the teaching of M1 to these resources. And so we want to guide you. But if you can assist us, that'll be really awesome. Okay, more about that later. All right. So just for clarity, you've got EV3 Classroom or Spike app on your computer. Your learners must do the coding. It's not you as the coach. You don't need to code everything. In fact, I would say no coach must touch a laptop. Then you download the code onto the brain using a USB or a Bluetooth, and then you take the robot, just the robot, to the robot table, and then you test the code. Okay? And keep all backups on a USB. A very good idea. We cannot have learners carrying laptops around on their arms, on their upper arms. We cannot have learners with no backups where the computer is the only backup they have of their code. It calls for great stress. All right, so that's the end of the theory of programming for Unit 2. And I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to ask Tumelo just to kind of show you around the real world. Let me just close this and stop sharing. Okay, Tumelo, over to you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me start off by saying, as you saw yesterday, so today's session is just a continuous session from yesterday. Yesterday, we did indicate that if you would like to download this app, which is the EV3 Classroom app, it's freely downloadable on YouTube. So once you have downloaded it and installed it, and your laptop or your computer or your tablet meets the requirements, this is how it's going to look like. This will be your home page. As for me here, it shows my recent projects, and you can see a few seconds ago, this is what I was doing. So what you'll simply do, as soon as you open your app, it will look like this, and you go to new project. Once you go to new project, this is how it will look like. So now, as Dr. Gous indicated, the different colors means that there will be different functions. For example, here on the motors, this is where you get to indicate where your motor needs to go to. Looking at the robot, I have the left one and the right one, and they are connected on ports B and C. All right, and then here on the movement part, this is where I'm going to start my programming. So on this programming side of things, oh wait, I forgot to ask, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, yep.
And then what happens here is there are two options, as Dr. Gous indicated. Let me show you. So this is what Dr. Gous was sharing just now. So I'm going to show you how we get which program in which place and how we can do it. So the first things first here, it's setting the movement. So we're going to take this one, set movement motors to B and C. So this is exactly what I was talking about. This is your port B and this is your port C. So if, for example, your learners change it, for example, to port A or port D, you need to ensure that your cables are correctly in the right ports. All right, so for now, I'll just leave it on the default settings because I also indicated here, which is port B and port C. And then I'm going to set my movement speed. My movement speed is 50%. And you also have the advantage of changing it to 100% or taking it less, but I'll also leave, let me leave it to 70%. 70% is a good score. And then from there, I'll say move forward for run rotation. So there's an option here. Okay, so here it says move forward, and then on the drop down sign here, there's also an option for backwards, which I'll show you later on. And then here on the forward part, or as soon as you click on one, you can put any number that you want for your rotations. That's why on this basic type of a robot here, you can see we have a pointer. So this pointer indicates the number of rotation. For example, like this is a whole rotation. And then we have options here for rotation, degrees, and seconds. But for now, we'll stick into rotations. Then I'll go to control, where I'll have to wait for 2 seconds. I'll just say 2 seconds. And then from there, I'll come back to move forward for run rotation. I'll put it here. As I've indicated before, now we need to move back from where we have started. So meaning it's going to say move forward. Then on the drop down sign, there'll be a backward. And then because I want it to move backwards where it has started, which is 3 rotations, I'll simply click on 3. And then I'll have to use that hamburger option, which is stop and exit program, which is this. And then now, so there are 2 options for you to download your program. The first one is you can either connect your device with the brick Bluetooth. The second one, it's you use a cable. So for now, I'm using a cable, and pay attention there on the red hub, that brick that you're seeing here, this one here. It says open brick or connect, it's red. Once I connect it, it will change color. And on the top right, it will also indicate that it has been successfully being connected. There we go. The brick was successfully connected. And then the color changes to green. So now, based on the previous slide that Dr. Host was presenting on, she said good programming habits. Number 1 is to save the program. So the first thing that I'll do, I'll come here under project. Next to project, there are 3 dots, and then there's an X. So on the 3 dots, I'll come here and I'll click rename, and then I'll say M1. For example, this is one of the good programming habits, which is step 1 is to save. What is the next step? The next step is to test our code. So how do we test our code now? On the drop-down side, in fact, on your bottom right, there's a drop-down sign which says download, and there's another sign that says download and run. So I will download my program. Once I download my program, the robot will make a very nice sound, which is, there we go, that indicates that my program has been successfully installed on the brick. So now how do I find the program that I've installed on the brick? So here I'll have to go to the files and click on the name that I saved my program as. As you can see there on the top left, I saved it as M1. So even here, it will still say M1, and then I'll click there. And then for me to play it now, it will require me to get a nice bass. For example, let me show you here. So these are some of the examples that I can show. And then now, let me see whether will my camera show. Perfect. All right. Now, once I click, it will make a beautiful sound and run 3 rotations forward, wait for 2 seconds, and then come back for 3 rotations, then it stops. Stops for 2 seconds, comes back. So this is the simpler part of programming this robot. For some of you, you have an option whether to add a sound or whether you want to display. So you can see that on your left-hand side, the purple side is for displaying. Maybe if you want to put a nice smile or a message there, you can even write it. And then there's a sound option as well. So yeah, I think this is the basics part of it. I'll hand over to Dr. Host unless we do have any questions. Any questions from the participants?
Save it.
Oh, how do I save the program? Perfect. I was still going through the good programming habits.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you for that. Remember, the first one was you save your program, which is there on the app. The second one is test your code, which I did. The third one is to back up your program. So now backing up your program, you can either save it on your desktop or on your USB device, whereby you simply come here on File, and then you simply say Save As. So once I say save as, it will be indicated there as file name is M1, save type is EV3 project archive device. Then I can just have a nice folder that I just say M1 coding. So that's another option for it. So don't forget your good programming habits when you program. I think that's it from my side, unless we have any other questions. Any questions? All right, to see on the chat, Susan said, is there an attendance register? Nope. We don't do attendance register. So as soon as you logged in, that's for us. So, and then Litsualo says, can you share screen again? I think that was earlier on. All right. I see. Oh, this is yesterday's chat. Sorry. But that chat is relevant. So I think Dr. Hoos will clarify on this one. Yesterday, Dr. Miller said it seems as though this course is aimed at educators and not to the general student. Am I interpreting this correctly? So it's not, we are accommodative of everyone. You can either be an educator, whether a student or an aspiring coach, or someone who's interested in coding. So this is not only aimed at educators. Can I receive hands? Otherwise, I'll give Dr. Hoos to proceed.
Thanks, Tamelo. All right. I'm never sure whether Eric can hear me. Okay, this happens when there's two people in one room. Okay, thanks, Tamelo. And that's the start of programming. So if any of you have never programmed before and somebody asked, so when did you start programming? It was on this day, on the 5th of February, 2025. So it's interesting, 5225. There we go. Palindromic number. No, it's not. It's the other way around. And they should put it the other way around. Anyway, it's got 2 5s and 2 0s, 2 2s, but it's good. All right. So what is programming? And obviously you can program to go faster, and you can program to go slower, and you can program to go further, and you can program to go further backwards, and you can program to just go a little bit, and you can program to go around a corner, and you can program to go around a square and around a circle. One of the fun things we get to do is we stick a one of these these Koki pens on the side of the robot, and then we make the robot draw the letter of your name. So, you know, an L would be straightforward. So you go straight, and then you turn right, and you go straight, and then there's a major L. And so the S's are a bit different. The K's are, but we have the whole alphabet in robot sign language. And so, and it's all about programming your robot accurately. And so your robot responding accurately to the program you're writing. And there's no such thing as a misbehaving robot. It's probably in the code. All right, it's in the code. So that is really a very basic introduction. And I am encouraging you, thank you, Tamelo, for just going here and there, but going here and there and doing other things. And as we go on, especially to next month, to March, where we start using data from the environment to control the robot. And so that's a totally different way of programming. What we're doing now is doing this and then that, and then that, and then that. So it's called linear programming. And what we'll do in March is we'll say, all right, how do you use data to control the programming? So how do you make decisions? How do you do things multiple times? Okay. So now you've got a robot and you've got some programming to do something. And so the next step would be, we've done the navigation part, but how do you solve problems? How do you look at a problem and say, okay, so how do we do that? And so it's part of the lesson today in problem solving and understanding the problem. Then tomorrow, the first session will be on passive attachment. So how do you add something to the structure to solve a problem? So for example, you have a robot and over there is a slab of chocolate and it's yours if you can fetch it. Okay, so the problem is going to fetch the slab of chocolate. And slabs of chocolate always work really well with children. All right, So that means you've got to go there and you've got to bring it back. But if you go there, how are you going to bring it back? So you've got to go behind it and then push it back, or go around it and bring it back. Okay, so these are all the things that where you solve the problem. But how far is the chocolate? Okay, so if it's 20 centimeters and one rotation, the circumference of one wheel is 10, that means you need 2 rotations. But if it's 25 centimeters away, then it's 2 rotations plus half a rotation. So you've got to rotate for 2.5 centimeters. And remember, what you do 2.5 centimeters forward to get to the chocolate, then you've got to go around it still, and you've got to come back the 2.5 centimeters. So it's always, that's the problem solving part of it. You've got to think, what do you want to do and how do you want to do it? And then how do you make it happen? And then you have to test. With everything you do, you have to test. All right. So I'm going to give you just a general introduction to problem solving. And here we go again. All right. Tumelo's in the lobby, hopefully. Tumelo. Good. Good. Excellent. At least I can half see you behind me. Yay. All right. So this unit is called problem solving. And obviously, we're just like scratching the surface. It's a huge topic. And I want you as coaches to realize that problem solving is an amazing skill to develop. And to develop a problem solving skill takes time. All right. And your learners are not going to learn problem solving skills at all if you as a coach insist on building the robot for them and programming it for them. So I'm asking you super nicely, let the learners learn. Let them solve the problems on their own. So normally a robotics competition comes with a whole lot of little mini problems to solve. But in the end is, how do you put all the solutions together to get an ultimate solution? All right. So let me unpack this. So navigation of a robot is that ability of the robot to move in an environment. Okay, it's got to navigate the terrain. Okay, and if the robot moves autonomously, which means it's been programmed to do so, there's no remote control. So if you see something, you can't make the robot stop with a remote control. It's got to program. So it's programmed, and it does what it has to do on its own. Okay, so I'm going to leave it up to you to go and find definitions of what robot navigation looks like. Okay, so now here's, just before we carry on, here's another thing. If you navigate in the air, if you navigate on land, and if you navigate in the sea, that's 3 different types of navigation. Okay. On land, we kind of used to following a map. All right, we follow the roads. That's our navigation. But in the air, well, there's no lines. There's no streets up there. And in the sea, it's even worse because you are just kind of going and you've got to miss things. And so that is, I'll leave that for a discussion for tomorrow afternoon. Odometry data is the data that the robot can pick up through its sensors. And there's many robotic navigation techniques that we can use. Right? But what is important is if it's autonomous, it's programmed to do so no matter what. So if you program your robot to go 10 rotations, and at rotation number 6, it encounters a great big chasm in the ground, it's going to go into that chasm. All right. You didn't program it to go navigate until you sense a cliffside and then you must stop. No, you just said 10 centimeters or whatever, 10 rotations. Okay, so there's a process to solve the problem, and there's always steps. There's always steps to. So you've first got to understand what the problem is, and then you select. From the possible solutions, you select the best one. Then you've obviously got to implement, and then you've got to test it. There's always testing involved. Otherwise, you're not going to know whether your solution is going to work. Okay. All right. So then there's this thing. I call it this thing about problem solving. Okay. It's definitely a very important 21st century skill, including with imagination and collaboration and critical thinking. Well, those you can only implement if you've already solved the problem. But problem solving requires practice. And so that's why I term it a skill that is developed. All right. There is no in the textbook answer. You need huge amounts of patience and perseverance. And after all, there might be more than one correct answer. And I put in parentheses there that I don't think we use robots to teach problem solving. We use robotics to develop problem solving skills. I don't think you can learn problem solving. I'm just going to ask, can you open this door, see that everybody's gone? All right. So problem solving as a 21st century skill is really about collaboration. And I'm asking you as coaches to watch your teams closely. Everybody has a solution to the problem. It doesn't mean that one is more wrong or more right than anybody else's, but collaboratively, you can come up with an optimal solution for your team. And memorizing the correct answer, that doesn't exist. The cool thing about these robots is that if the structure is wrong, you just change it. And if the program doesn't want to work properly, you just change it, right? There's no record of what was changed, what worked, what didn't work. It's irrelevant. We want it to work. We want to work towards the goal of getting a robot to solve the problem, okay? And then for solution, you have to know, well, what is your success? What do you want to achieve? The success of fetching the chocolate bar is to go there, fetch the chocolate bar and bring it back. Okay, and you've got obviously according to where you start. All right, so let's here we're going to go. So we have a robot. A robot can move, and we understand navigation. And I know there's lots of color sensors and ultrasonic sensors and things like that. But for now, we just say we've got a robot, and we want it to move. Now, if you program your robot to move for 10 kilometers, it's going to keep walking for 10 kilometers. Yeah. All right, so if you're faced with a problem, so what is given? It's all facts. What is given, what is known, what is required. Okay, and we're going to do navigation for wheeled robots. So let's just focus on the wheeled robots. All right, so my friend Tanya gave me this list a long time ago. It's called Solve Them. So you sketch it, you write down your objectives, you list your variables and your equations, and then you manipulate the whole thing to get to an answer. And so this is her book, Think Like an Engineer, which is an active learning approach, which works. All right. So say you had a robot here at start, and you have to get it to stop to end, and that's the distance. Okay, so that's a given. The distance is given, and your robot is given by. All right. So the problem doesn't specify if the robot should go forward or backwards. Did you see that? The robot also didn't say how fast it must go. That doesn't matter. Okay, did it say it must move in rotations to be programmed? Well, it depends on the size of the wheels. Okay. What we do know is the robot must go from start to end. Okay, so we have got a distance. The distance the robot must travel is 50 centimeters. The circumference of the wheel is 17.8 because we measured it, I promise. And so the rotations to be entered, total rotations, is the total distance divided by your circumference of your wheel, because that's one rotation. Ta-da! All right, so we do the calculation. We say, okay, it must move 2.81 rotations. Okay, excellent. All right, now let's quickly change this wording. We've got a start to finish, we've got a distance, but now we're going to measure the time. Okay, and we're saying that if you have more power, you're going to move faster, so the speed is going to be greater. All right, but we can't measure speed directly, so we accelerate at the start and then we slow down at the end. That's how a robot works. And so now we want to do it slightly differently. All right, so we've got the distance, we've got the circumference, and then we've got the number of rotations, which we're going to calculate. Ching, ching, ching. Now we're going to set it to different power levels. And what we do is when we set it to a power level 10, we let it do what it has to do, and we see how long it takes. And then we took next power level, we see how long it takes. And next power level, we see how long it takes. Okay. And of course, put all the equations back in together. Ping, ping, ping. Number of rotations is 8.31. And now we have a table. So we run the program. We say power is 10. We run it. We check the time. We calculate the speed. We run it. Check the time. Calculate the speed. Here we go. All right. So when you're solving a problem, sometimes the problems become big. Okay. So how do you compete in a robotics competition? Well, you've got to do bits and pieces. You've got to do bits and pieces. You've got to do missions. Okay. But there are building instructions out there. There are program examples down there. There are online tutorials on there, and there's the YouTube videos. And they will all guide you, I promise. Okay. So there's some resources just for problem solving. I'll send this out. Okay. So here's one problem that's yours and it's not your team's, is that if the robot doesn't behave, then it's your problem. And there's quite a few that are quite laughable until you experience it, and then you think, oh, why did I think of that? And so the one of them is putting wires in the correct ports, getting your wires confused. It helps. It happens. So check your robot regularly. All right. So in the activities that I've got for Unit 3, the robot must draw the first letter of your name. Yeah. The robot must move around a square. Robot must move around a rectangle, and robot must move around a circle. All right. So for a robot going around a square, you move it and move it and move it and move it. You do 4 times exactly the same thing. Okay. For a rectangle, you move a long piece, and then a short piece, and a long piece, and then a short piece. You've solved the problem. Okay. And that is the end of an introduction to programming in Unit 3 on problem solving. Do we have any questions? I'm going to stop here for a minute and see whether there are any questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or you can simply type on the chat. It's the Q&A chat. So if you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand. I know Alpheus is in the house, so okay. MCB, your microphone has been enabled.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. I've just entered the meeting now, ma'am. I wanted to ask on the what is stopping the robot not to move? What makes the robot not to move? I've seen, but they are too small. I wasn't able to read, but I'm interested in knowing what makes the robot not to move, because that is what we come across always. That's how we do everything, and then go to reset on the robot, then it does not move. Then we have that challenge.
Okay, so Masibi, I will upload the recordings for these sessions, hopefully by the weekend, and then I suggest you watch them from the beginning. Because
Okay.
that was the very first session we did today, was how to program a robot. You've got to program it, and then you download your program onto the brain of the robot, and then you make it move. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Elizabeth, your microphone has been enabled.
Can you hear me?
A little bit louder.
Can you hear me?
Very quiet, Elizabeth.
I hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you slightly.
I did. Hello?
Yes, it's a bit better.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, what I'm saying, another problem of the wheels not moving. Sometimes it's because of the skid that the learners are using and the base. Sometimes we must constantly check our wheels and the base, if the base is clean, and the correct inserting of the ports, the cable into the ports.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Got to be in the correct ports, otherwise the robot's not going anywhere. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
And
Thank
it
you.
shows you. Thanks, Elizabeth. And it actually shows you on the programming canvas. It actually shows you which ports are being used for the motors. You must just make sure that what it shows you on the top and what is used in your code matches the same thing. Thanks, Tamila.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Are you going to show Tamila?
So looking at the at my screen, you can see there that my robot is connected. So once you click on your brick there, you will see that it's connected on port B or port C. But now, if for example, let me also open my camera. you'll see here that it says that right, this is port B and C. Now, let's say, for example, what would have happened is that you have taken this and placed it on port A. All right. Now, if that's the case, oh, what's happening now on the screen? If that's the case, you'll see here it will say port A and port C. But the problem might have been here when you have set your motors. For example, you might have left it on the default settings, which is port B and C, instead of you changing it from port B to port A, which is like this. So it's something that you have to look at as you are programming. So that's why when I started programming, I did indicate that you need to ensure that you look at your ports, as well as you can verify that by looking at your brick as it's connected. All right. You have a question? I see your microphone is on.
No, I'm no longer talking.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, do we have any further questions? Any other questions of clarity? This is a good session because we get to engage with you, show you some few technical aspects that you know, you think that you are going wrong, but in fact, it's one of those technical things. So it does happen. So, and when these things happen, they also open your eyes so that you are certain that in future, whenever you program your robot, these are things that you look out for. Yeah. So do we have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand, or we can write on the chat box. The Q&A is open. Anyone? Are we A-okay? All right. Seems like everyone is okay with questions.
The robot's
Then
going to work perfectly.
certainly, yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will encourage you to be part of the Friday online session that will be taking place at 3 p.m. So the Friday online session includes such conversations. So for some of you, you might be having an EV3 robot at home or a Spark Prime and you are experiencing some technical issues with it. So feel free to ask us any of those questions. We will be answering some of the questions related to the Massive Open online courses and just giving you an introductive orientation session. And for those that also have questions regarding our short learning programs, which will officially open for next semester, we welcome such questions. So yeah, I think on my side, I'm done. Dr. Host, anything from your side?
There we go. I'm suckling to hear myself. There we go. All right. Any questions? I think also the fundamental of programming is practice. So once you can get it to go 4 centimeters, how do you make it go 3 centimeters? If you change your wheels, how do you go there? There's options there on rotations, or you can go on degrees. So one rotation is 360 degrees. So when you're doing very fine moves on the robot, so if you want to turn a little bit around a corner, then you use so many degrees because your wheel must just turn ever so slightly. There's also an option to move your motors by time, but you might need to watch that because if your robot is not charged fully and you program it on time, it might not go as far as you want in the given time. You know, the tighter you are, the less economical you are with your energy. So, okay. All right. As always with programming, it's easy to sit and watch. It's I think it's slightly more difficult to actually get it done, to try it and not to get frustrated because programming is a skill, all right? And you need to learn it. We'd love to have you visit one of our open days where you can practice it. If you have robotics kits, get your learners to program the robot to go there and back quickly. It's nice and slowly first, and then back, and then a little bit faster and back, and a little bit faster and back, and then and see where the robot goes and see whether you understand. All right. Yeah, it's a journey. And so if there are no further questions, we're going to have to close the session, Tumelo.
There's a question from Mrs. Fenter. She's saying, how would you move in a circle without a sensor? Slow movement in one motor and faster in the other.
Mrs. Fenter, is that a suitable answer?
That was my proposed answer. Just checking if it is accurate.
There we go. Well done. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And slowly always does much better than fast. And I'll tell you, I once had a team of all boys and everything had to be fast. So we had many emission calamities, but slower is always better. And even if you just speed it up slightly, then you get to the same solution. But definitely slower and round a circle. Maybe that's a good exercise for you to do this weekend, is move your robot around a bucket without colliding with the bucket. And you can't just go right around so wide that you can't get close to the bucket. You've actually got to go around the bucket. Okay. All right. That was an introduction to programming. We use the Scratch programming. I am encouraging you to please download the Spike app and then to work through some of the examples, especially just especially the basic ones are going forward and backwards and left and right. Tumelo, do you want to show the turning?
Yes.
Okay, so Tumelo's got this robot to turn, so he's quite keen to show you. Over to you, Tumelo.
All right.
You've got to put your camera on.
My mouse pad. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, going forward, we'll be demonstrating. I think it's relevant that we demonstrate so that you get to understand what we are up to and get a sense of an understanding, as well as you see whenever we do our errors, so that you do understand what we are talking about when we say that you might experience one or two mistakes. So thank you for that question, Mrs. Fenter. So what's going to happen now is that I'm going to try and see whether will it run the way I have set it, and it seems like it's not. So, oh, it's me. So the reason why it didn't, I still left it on port A instead of putting it on port B. So you see that these things do happen, and I also did change my movement motors here. So I'll try it up again and see whether will it work. Let me quickly do this so that I get to demonstrate this nicely for you. Right, I'll bring it towards us. Oopsie. So it's not moving. I think I might have changed the program without downloading it. So which can be one of the causes. So let's see. It's on port B and C, perfect. All right, download. Now let's see whether will it work. It's moving. Okay, so it moved a bit fast. Let me try again so that you can see the mistake that I did. Perfect, yes. So it's moving I need to change my, let me share my screen again. I don't know whether my screen is showing. It's not. Okay. Now it's showing. So this is the program, and this is the current program. So this is what's happening here. Let me see what I can also show the, okay. So this is the current program. That's why it didn't work out. So let me try to reduce my speed here from it. let me from 70 to 50. And then I simply have to download all the time, please. You have to download, or if you are connected, that will be much easier. You just click on download. Then it will be better. There we go. So let's see. Few rotations going forward, then wait for 2 seconds, and then move backwards. All right, let me try and neaten that up a bit. So looking here on the program, okay, let me slightly say this. It needs to wait for 2 seconds before it turns, and then it waits again for another 2 seconds before it goes back, so that you can understand what's happening here. And I see even when it turns, there's some bit of speed. So I'll just put it on 5%. So it's a matter of trial and error. And then I'll click on download. Once I click download, I'll stop sharing my screen so that my camera shows nicely. Perfect. So the camera is showing nicely on my side. So I assume that even for you at home, you can see perfectly well. Then I click on play, then it starts moving. Then what happens is it turns into a circle, then it moves forward. All right. So that's exactly what Mrs. Venter did say. So how would you move in a circle without a sensor, which is slow movement in one motor and faster in the other? So we did try it, and let's see what you have to say. Any comments, ladies and gentlemen?
Everybody overwhelmed. Oh my goodness.
All right. All right. Feel free to raise your hand. Perhaps you might want to ask or something else. But I see it's 4 minutes to 4 now, and we are about to close our session. So if you don't have any questions, I will encourage you to join tomorrow's session. And like I said yesterday, please, if you do have questions such as these, feel free to write them down. And then tomorrow, you'll be one of the first people who will be like, I forgot, I didn't understand what happened yesterday. So that's allowed for you to ask questions. But from our side, from the UNISA Science Engagement Center, I would like to thank you for joining. And it's 3 minutes to 4. And for those that have joined the online session or watching the recording, thank you also for making the time to watch. Okay. Over to you, Dr. Host.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a very basic introduction to the program. Hopefully you've got some of the concepts, and you'll realize that to make your robot move, you have to give it instructions. Instructions are part of coding, and the coding you write on your laptop, and then you transfer it. Tumelo uses the USB cable, but the Bluetooth does cause more chaos in the class as well. Because you got to make sure you download your code onto your correct laptop, which is always awesome. All right. Have a wonderful afternoon. It's a wonderful Wednesday. It's a wet Wednesday up here in Florida. It is chucking down. We just had a cloudburst up here. So, yes, always good to do it slowly but surely and to get there. George, you have a hand. Yes.
You may proceed, George.
George can't unmute. No. Is it fine? I says it's fine. All right, George, please come with your question next week, tomorrow. All right. And then hopefully by Friday, we'll have the MOOC portal ready for a tour, and we'll show you what it's all about. Okay. There we go. I say thank you very much to all of you for attending, for being here with us, and stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow then. All right, Tumelo, do you want to close the meeting and say thank you? I will stop the recording. Oopsie daisy.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining today's session. Keep well. And